No one believed it at first. Cameras were rolling, the audience silent, and Keir Starmer stood still for a long second. Then he leaned toward the mic and said the words that froze the nation: "The people have spoken. A new general election will be held." It wasn't a rumor. It wasn't a leak. It was real, live, raw, and unscripted. Within seconds, the entire country erupted. Millions watching on television, millions more on their phones, all heard the same announcement, and history began to change in real time. It was meant to be just another political appearance. Keir Starmer, the Labour Party leader, was scheduled for a routine interview on national television. The studio was calm, the questions expected to revolve around policy updates and government plans. Even the interviewers seemed prepared for a quiet segment. But what happened next flipped everything upside down. As the cameras zoomed in, Starmer's face looked more serious than usual. His eyes weren't darting side to side like they do when avoiding tough questions. He looked straight into the lens, as if speaking not just to the hosts, but directly to the millions watching from their living rooms. At first, he spoke calmly about current events. Inflation. Energy prices. NHS reforms. It was all normal. But then, he paused. A long, loaded silence. That pause felt like forever. Then Starmer took a breath and said something no one saw coming. "I've heard the calls. I've seen the streets. I've read the messages. The British public is asking for a choice. And I will give them that choice. We are moving to call a general election." In the studio, the air seemed to vanish. One of the hosts dropped their pen. The audience, seated behind the cameras, gasped out loud. On screen, the live feed's comment section began exploding. Viewers asked if they were dreaming. Others demanded confirmation. Was this really happening? Within seconds, every major news channel cut to the live feed. Even international media scrambled to pick it up. On Twitter, Starmer began trending in less than 1 minute. But what made this moment truly explosive was its rawness. There was no press release. No scheduled press conference. No official paperwork shown. Just one man, standing under the lights, making a decision that would shift the political future of the UK. Soon after, breaking news banners appeared on screens across the country. "Snap election called by Starmer" flashed in bold red letters. People in cafes turned their heads to nearby screens. In living rooms, families paused dinner. People in buses, trains, and shops stopped what they were doing. Across the nation, eyes were glued to the screen. This wasn't a party statement. This was a personal declaration. Political analysts scrambled to understand the move. Was it planned? Was it a response to the growing pressure from recent protests? Or was Starmer trying to catch his political rivals off guard? Social media exploded with mixed reactions. Supporters praised him for being bold, for listening to the voice of the people. Critics accused him of political theater. But no one could deny the scale of the moment. Never before in recent British history had a potential prime minister used live national television to declare an unscheduled general election. Meanwhile, online petitions that had been gaining steam over the last few weeks suddenly surged. One petition demanding a new vote had already reached 5 million signatures by the time Starmer finished speaking. That number tripled in the next hour. Back in the studio, the host nervously tried to follow up, but the moment had already taken flight. Starmer only added, "This is bigger than politics. It's about trust. And I believe the people are ready to speak again." And just like that, the interview ended. No questions were answered. No party members flanked him. Just silence, and the beginning of a political earthquake the country hadn't just witnessed a press moment. It had witnessed a turning point. In a few short minutes, a quiet studio turned into a national storm. The man who once played it safe had thrown down a challenge, and now, all of Britain is waiting to see how this gamble unfolds. It didn't happen overnight. Keir Starmer's sudden announcement might have shocked viewers in the moment, but behind it was a slow, building wave of public pressure that had been boiling for months. Across the UK, from small villages to major cities, ordinary citizens had been demanding one thing: a new election. They wanted their voices heard, not later, not in 2 years, but now. The tension had been growing for weeks. Fuel prices had once again risen. NHS waiting times were at their worst in years. Strikes were returning across multiple sectors. Even Labour voters began to question if promises made during the last election were truly being delivered. But what really lit the fire was something unexpected: a live public forum on national television. A few weeks before Starmer's shock announcement, a special edition of A Britain Speaks, a popular political program, aired with live call-ins from viewers. That night, the mood changed. Caller after caller didn't just ask questions, they demanded action. One elderly woman's voice shook with emotion as she said, "We trusted you, Mr. Starmer. But it feels like no one's listening. If you won't hear us, let the whole country speak again." That clip went viral. Within hours, it had millions of views across platforms. People from every corner of the UK began recording their own video messages, using the hashtag #LetUsVote. What started as a spark quickly became a firestorm. At the same time, a wave of public protests rolled out across London, Manchester, Glasgow, Birmingham, and Cardiff. Crowds held banners reading, "Let democracy speak," and "We want the ballot." It wasn't just one party or one group. It was a mix: young and old, rich and poor, left and right. People were angry, frustrated, and most importantly, united. Then came the petitions. One particular petition on the Parliament website hit 1 million signatures in just 48 hours. Another one hosted on a private platform reached 2 million before media outlets even caught up. Headlines began to ask tough questions: can Starmer ignore this much longer? And public calls for snap election grow too loud to dismiss. Even some members inside Labour started to feel the pressure. Quiet whispers turned into louder voices behind closed doors. A few backbench MPs reportedly urged Starmer to consider an early election to avoid appearing disconnected from the public. But Starmer remained silent, until the night he stepped into the studio and broke the silence in the most unexpected way. Some political experts believe the final push came not from Parliament, but from a shocking protest outside Starmer's own constituency office. Protesters didn't shout insults. Instead, they brought handwritten letters, hundreds of them, taped all over the building. Each letter came from a different family, telling a story of struggle, disillusionment, or lost hope. One note simply read, "If you still stand with us, prove it." That visual, paper letters fluttering in the wind, was shared millions of times online. Journalists picked it up. Activists turned it into an emblem of the movement. And according to insiders, Starmer saw those images just hours before his live TV appearance. It wasn't just about pressure, it was about trust. The UK was at a crossroads, and people were no longer willing to wait. They didn't want another long speech. They didn't want another plan. They wanted power returned to their hands. Starmer may have been trying to stay in control, but he was now facing something bigger than party politics, a people united by urgency. And so, when he finally announced a general election, many said it wasn't a decision, it was a surrender to a democratic wave too strong to resist. Whether it was bravery or panic, one thing was clear: the people had pushed, and Starmer had finally moved. And now, with the date of the election looming, the country asks, will those same voices that rose together at protest rallies and in comment sections come together again at the ballot box? Or was this only the beginning of an even deeper divide? As Keir Starmer's words echoed across living rooms and social feeds, Westminster shook, not just figuratively, but politically. The announcement didn't just send a message to the public, it ripped through the walls of Parliament like a political earthquake. Allies, rivals, insiders, and strategists were caught completely off guard. Even some Labour MPs had to hear the news the same way the public did, live on TV. In the hours that followed Starmer's declaration, phones rang non-stop inside government offices. Senior members of both the Labour and Conservative parties rushed to respond. Labour Party headquarters went into emergency mode. Staffers were seen entering late-night meetings. Sources confirmed that several high-ranking figures inside the party were not informed in advance, and the decision had caused major panic behind closed doors. One Labour insider told reporters, "It was bold. But we weren't ready. Nobody was ready." The Conservative Party wasted no time. Rishi Sunak quickly appeared in front of cameras just hours after the announcement. "Calm but sharp," he stated, while Labour scrambles to explain itself, "We are ready to lead Britain with certainty." He criticised Starmer's chaotic leadership and warned voters not to hand power to a man who changes course under pressure. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats and SNP also reacted fast. Ed Davey of the Lib Dems called the move surprising, but necessary, and expressed confidence in presenting a strong alternative. The SNP, dealing with its own leadership changes, saw an opportunity to reignite its base, especially in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon's successor, Mary McAllen, called it a chance for Scotland's voice to rise again. Back inside Labour, however, tensions were rising. A few frontbenchers publicly supported Starmer's move, calling it democratic bravery. But not all were so enthusiastic. One MP, speaking off the record, said, "If this backfires, it's not just the leadership that goes down, it's all of us." Political commentators began to appear across networks, trying to make sense of the situation. Some called it Starmer's masterstroke, a way to seize the narrative before public anger turned to resentment. Others described it as a gamble, one that could cost him not just leadership but Labour's momentum heading into 2026. Even Parliament's opposition benches were thrown into confusion. Several scheduled debates were paused. Emergency meetings were called. Cabinet ministers began redrawing campaign strategies overnight. In one powerful moment, a live clip from inside Parliament showed two MPs, one Tory, one Labour, both checking their phones and shaking their heads in disbelief. Then came the polling shocks. Within 24 hours, snap polls were released. They showed dramatic shifts. Labour saw a brief surge of support among younger voters, impressed by Starmer's bold move. But they also lost ground among older, centrist voters who feared instability. The Conservatives saw a small bump from those seeking stability, but overall, the polls remained tight. In response, both parties began launching emergency campaign prep. Leaflets were rushed into production. Digital ads were pre-scheduled. Volunteer drives were reactivated. Candidates who had stepped away from the spotlight were suddenly called back. Local branches were told, "Get ready to hit the streets now." Even political donors got involved. Reports emerged of high-level funders demanding emergency strategy sessions. Several large donors reportedly withheld funding temporarily, unsure if Starmer's announcement was genius or recklessness. To add to the tension, Parliament itself might need to go into dissolution mode earlier than planned. Civil servants began reviewing constitutional guidelines. Dates for possible election days were debated. Legal teams were consulted to ensure the process could be pushed forward under proper parliamentary procedures. In one especially tense interview, a BBC journalist asked a senior Labour strategist, "Is this leadership, or is this panic dressed as courage?" The strategist paused and replied, "It's history. That's the only way I can describe it." Whatever it was, it had shattered the calm inside the halls of power. What had started as a single sentence during a live TV broadcast had turned into a tidal wave, ripping through the political structures that had spent years building stability, and the real storm hadn't even begun. After Keir Starmer's explosive announcement, one question echoed louder than the rest: when will the vote happen? While his declaration made headlines, it left a trail of confusion in its wake. No official date was set, no legal paperwork had been presented yet, and no formal motion had been placed before Parliament. But that didn't stop the country from racing into election mode. Within hours, Whitehall began preparing for what could be a fast-track election schedule. Government legal teams reviewed constitutional procedures. According to UK law, Parliament must be dissolved before an election can be held, and a 25-working-day period is required between the dissolution and polling day. If Starmer follows through immediately, we could be looking at a national vote within 6 to 8 weeks. That timeline would make this one of the shortest election campaigns in British history, a sprint, not a marathon. The kind of political race where a single mistake, a wrong word, or an emotional video could swing thousands of votes overnight, and that's exactly what has party leaders worried. For Labour, Starmer's boldness may boost his image as decisive and responsive, but it also puts them under intense pressure. Local campaign offices are still unprepared. Many candidates haven't fully launched their campaigns, and Labour's national message hasn't been updated since last year. Rushing now means errors could happen, and in politics, even the smallest error can go viral. On the other side, the Conservatives may have the machinery ready, but they face a massive public trust gap. The cost of living crisis, rising mortgage rates, and NHS backlogs have made voters impatient. The Tories' message of stability may not be enough this time. With Labour pulling the trigger first, they now look like they're on the back foot, reacting rather than leading in this high-stakes atmosphere. Both major parties are rolling the dice. And that includes smaller parties too, the Liberal Democrats see an opening to appeal to disillusioned centre-left voters. The Greens are focusing on climate-related failures. Reform UK is aiming to scoop up frustrated Brexiteers. And in Scotland, the SNP wants to turn the snap election into a debate about independence again. Every party is fighting to turn this chaos into an opportunity, but beyond the politics lies a deeper question: will the public turn out? Turnout is the silent player in every election. In the last general election, more than 14 million eligible voters stayed home. Now, with the nation on edge, every party is fighting not just for swing voters, but for those who've given up on voting altogether, and for many voters, Starmer's announcement was only the beginning. In towns across Britain, people are asking hard questions. Was this really about giving us power, or escaping pressure? Can we trust a leader who changed course so suddenly? Others, especially younger voters, are inspired. They say it shows that protest works, that voices matter when they come together. The media is already gearing up for one of the most dramatic campaigns in modern British history. Late-night debates, viral campaign videos, policy leaks, and emotional testimonies are expected to fill screens over the coming weeks. Every day could bring a twist. Every speech could turn the tide. Political analysts are divided. Some say Starmer's move was a calculated risk, one that could pay off big if the public rewards his responsiveness. Others warn it could backfire, especially if the election becomes more about personalities than policies. One expert described the situation as the most unstable starting line we've ever seen. And amidst all this is the biggest unknown: the voters. Will they remember the protests? Will they trust the parties? Or will they seek something entirely new? For now, the countdown has begun. The UK is heading into uncharted waters. One man shocked the nation. Now, the nation will answer, not with hashtags, not with chants, but with their votes. The outcome? Completely uncertain, but one thing is clear: history is being written, one ballot at a time.